Alright guys, so what we're going to do today is we're going to do section 8.4, so we're rationalizing the denominator. So answers should never have radicals in the denominator. So if you have something like this, 3 over the square root of 7, you can't leave an answer like this because you can't have a radical in the denominator. To get the radical out of the denominator, you multiply by 1, but your 1 looks a little bit different. How your 1's going to look like is like this. The square root of 7 times the square root of 7, because any number over itself is going to be simplified to 1. So that's why it says to get the radical out of the denominator, you multiply by 1. So let's do this. So when you rationalize the denominator, if you have 15 over the square root of 5, you see that you have the square root of 5, and we can't leave it that way. So what we have to do is multiply it by 1, so this would be the square root of 5 over the square root of 5. So when we multiply straight across, we get 15 square root of 5 over 5 times 5 is the square root of 25, which square root of 25 is a perfect square, and you'll always get a perfect square, and the square root of 25 is going to be 5. So we get 15 over the square root of 5. Now the last thing that you have to do is simplify, because 15 divided by 5 will simplify to be 3 square root 5. So those will simplify with each other. And this is your final answer. Okay, let's try another one. So I've got 3 over the square root of 24. So first thing I want to do is I want to multiply it by 1. So I go the square root of 24 over the square root of 24 because I can't have a radical in the denominator. So on the numerator I've got 3 square root 24. And on my denominator, square root of 24 times the square root of 24 is a perfect square of 576. But the square root of 576 is just going to be 24. If you want to go ahead and just take off the square root, you can to go to this step. I don't really care. Either way is totally fine. Now we've got 3 square root 24. So what we need to do is we need to clean that up a little bit more. So we got to find the factors of 24. So my factors of 24 are 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and then 4 and 6. My perfect square is the 4 and the 6, so I got 3 square root 4 times 6. When I take out the square root of 4, I'm going to be left with 2, so I got 3 times 2 square root 6 over 24, and 3 times 2 is going to be 6 square root 6 over 24. Now again, I can simplify that up a little bit. So if I got 6 over 24, what goes into both 6 and 24 is 6. So 6 divided by 6 is 1. 24 divided by 6 is 4. So my final answer is going to be the square root of 6 over 4. And that is as far as you can take it. Alright, let's try a couple more. Alright, so the next one is 16 over the square root of 8. We cannot have a square root in the denominator, so we got to multiply the top and the bottom by that square root of 8. I do need to see that step. So we got 16 square root of 8 for our top. 8 times 8 is going to be 64. So you can either write the square root of 64 or you can write 8 right here. I'm going to do the square root of 64 just for consistency's sake. So we got 8. And now what we got to do right here is we have to clean up our numerator because 8 can be factored a little bit. So factors of 8 are 1 and 8, 2 and 4. Alright, 4 is a perfect square. So I've got 16 square root of 4 times 2. So this would be 16 times 2 square root of 2 over 8. 16 times 2 is 32. So I got 32 square root of 2 over 8. Then the last thing we have to do is look to simplify. And 32 and 8, what will go into both of those is 8. 32 divided by 8 is going to leave me with 4. 8 divided by 8 is going to leave me with 1. So my final answer is going to be 4 square root 2. Now if you wanted to simplify right here, the 16 over 8, and be left with 2 square root 8, and then simplify from there, you're going to get the exact same answer. It's really up to you how you approach it. Alright, so I want you to pause it, and I want you to try to do, well, this should be D. I want you to try to do D for me. So pause it and go for it. Okay, so for D, I got 18 over the square root of 24. We can't have a radical in the denominator, so we go square root of 24 over the square root of 24. So we get 18 square root 24 over the square root of 576. So that will be 24 right here. And then we have to find out our factors of 24. So for 24, this is 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and 4 and 6. So we got 18 square root 4 times 6. So this would be 18 times 2 square root 6 over 24. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. I just wasn't sure. So we get 36 square root of 6 over 24. So now we have to simplify that up a little bit more. So 36 and 24, what goes into both of those will be 12. So 36 divided by 12 will leave me with 3. 24 divided by 12 will leave me with 2. So I've got 3 square root 6 over 2 as my final answer. Hopefully you did okay on it. Alright, now we're going to see it just slightly different, but it's not that much different. So I got square root of 27 over 7. So what I would do first is I would just break this up just a little bit so it can look like the previous problem that we just did. We see that we have a radical in the denominator, so we're going to take the square root of 7 over the square root of 7. Now this time everything's underneath the house, so we got to multiply straight across. So if we multiply 27 times 7, that's going to be the square root of 189. And then 7 times 7 is 49, so I get the square root of 49, which would just be 7. And now all we have to do is clean up the top. So for 189, we get 4 factors. So 1 and 189, 3 and 63, and then 7 and 27, and then we get 9 and 21. So we're looking for a perfect square. The only perfect square that I have is the 9. So I would do the square root of 9 times 21. And the square root of 9 is going to be 3 square root 21 over 7. Now, a lot of people try to simplify this because they see that 21 and 7 typically would simplify, but it's not just 21, it's the square root of 21. So there is nothing else that you can do with this problem. This is as far as you can take it. Alright? So now, we've got 2 radical fractions. So we got the square root of 1 over 6 times the square root of 3 over 10. So first thing we want to do is we want to combine these together. So 1 times 3 would be 3. 6 times 10 is going to be 60. And then just like the last problem, I'm going to break it up. I'm going to go the square root of 3 over the square root of 60 to be able to approach. So I go the square root of 60 over the square root of 60. So 3 times 60 is going to be 180. And then 60 times 60 is going to be the square root of 3,600, which will really just be 60. Then we have to clean up the 180, or the square root of 180, so we have to find the factors of 180. And there's a lot of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them. Okay? So if you need to pause it for a second so you can find your factors, go for it. First factor is 1 and 180. Second factor is 2 and 90. 3 and 60, 4 and 45, 5 and 36, 6 and 30, 9 and 20, 10 and 18, and the last one is 12 and 15. And remember, I'm looking for perfect squares, so I've got 9, 36, 4, and I think that's it. My largest one is going to be the 36, so that's the one that I'm going to use. So I'm going to go the square root of 36 times 5. Square root of 36 is 6. Square root of 5 over 60. So now I've got to simplify. And we see that 6 over 60 will definitely simplify. What goes into both of those is 6. So 6 divided by 6 is 1. 60 divided by 6 is going to be 10. So I've got the square root of 5 over 10 as my final answer. Alright, I want you to pause it and I want you to try to do this one on your own. Alright, so we have the square root of 5 over 8 times the square root of 1 over 6. First thing you want to do is multiply straight across. So 5 times 1 is 5. 8 times 6 is going to be 48. Then I'm going to break it up, so I'm going to go square root of 5 over the square root of 48. Can't have a radical in the denominator, so we're going to multiply by 1. So that's square root of 48 over the square root of 48. Multiply straight across, so that would be the square root of 240 over the square root of 2,304, which is a perfect square of 48. Now I have to find my factors of 240, which there are a lot. So 1 and 240, 2 and 120, 3 and 80, 4 and 60, 5 and 48, 6 and 40, 8 and 30, 10 and 24, 12 and 20, and then 15 and 16. So now I'm going to look for my perfect squares. I have a 4, and then the other one that I have is 16. Any other perfect squares? Nope. Okay, so I'm going to use the 15 and 16, so I go to the square root of 16 times 15. The square root of 16 is going to be 4 square root 15 over 48. And then the last thing I have to do is I have to simplify for 4 and 48. So what goes into 4 and 48? 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. 48 divided by 4 is going to be 12. So my final answer is going to be the square root of 15 over 12. I hope you did well on that one. Alright. Now we're going to have some variables in here, but it still shouldn't be too bad. So I get the square root of 9m over n. So first thing I want to do is I want to split it up. So the square root of 9m over the square root of n. Can't have a radical in the denominator, so I have to multiply my top and my bottom by the square root of n. So in my top I have 9mn over the square root of n squared, which again, the square root of n squared, you got to divide your exponent by 2, which would leave you just with n. And then the other thing that I see is that I can't do anything with my variables in the top, but the 9, the square root of 9 is going to be 3. So I've got 3 square root mn. Then I check to see if I can cancel anything out. I can't. That's as far as I can take it. Okay. And then the last one for today, we got the square root of 16m squared n over the square root of 5. So first thing I want to do is we want to multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 5. Alright, so 16 times 5 is going to be 80. So I've got the square root of 80m squared n over the square root of 25, which is a perfect square, which leaves me with 5. Alright, now we get to find the factors of 80. When I find the factors of 80, I've got 1 and 80, 2 and 40, 4 and 20, and then 5 and 16, and the last one is 8 and 10. I'm looking for perfect squares. 4 is definitely a perfect square, and so is 16. 16 is the largest. So that's what we're going to use. So I've got the square root of 16 times 5m squared n. And this time we can pull out two things. The square root of 16 is going to be 4. The other one that I can divide out is the m squared, because we divide that by 2 and we're left with m. And then square root 5n over 5. Okay, look to see if there's anything I can cancel. There is not, so that's as far as I can take it. Alright guys, so now what I need for you to do is I need you to do your 8.4 homework. I do expect to see all work while you're doing it. Please make sure that if you have any questions, you either come see me or when you come to class, have them ready to go. Alright, thank you.